Hi, I'm Mark Broom and I'm a techno and electronic music producer stroke DJ, and I'm currently based in Norfolk. I run a record label called Beardman and currently releasing on Rekids in Berlin, and been collaborating with James on Blueprint and As the Fear Ratio.
Hi, I'm James Ruskin. We are sat in my London studio. I run a label called Blueprint Records, which has just had its 25th anniversary. I'm a producer, DJ, and make music as the Fear Ratio with Mr. Broom here.
My journey started in Essex, that's where I'm originally from. Started hanging out with Enjoy back in the early 90s. So yeah, visiting their sort of studio, you know, sort of sitting in the background. Produced like 1 or 2 tracks with them, and then through Enjoy, a friend of theirs did dancing with them, and he knew Ed and Andy from the Black Dog, so got connected with them and started taking the production further, and the rest is history.
I started mainly through spending way too much time in nightclubs in the late 80s, and ended up sharing a flat with someone who was hiring studio time, and because I was the only one with a car, I was the designated driver, and started getting into making music from there really. And shortly after that, set the label up, and as Mark said, the rest is history. When I started making electronic music, the main equipment that I had was an Atari ST running Cubase and a.k.a. S950, and an art effects unit was basically what we began with, but it was enough to record the first, I think, 2 Blueprint releases as outlines. So I think you can squeeze something out of any bit of equipment, and it's more what you do with it rather than what you have.
And I first started, as I mentioned earlier, working with Ed and Andy from Black Dog. They were using Amiga Dr. T's program, which I've never really heard of since. Then after that, moved on to more hardware stuff, so MPC, S950, and the Boss SE70 effects unit. Over time, moved more into the software area, so started off with Fruity Loops, and then slowly moving on to Ableton Live.
Over time, I bought my first Mac when audio editing sort of entered the arena. I think myself and a lot of other people kind of went fully into the box, and I went down that path for a while, but I fortunately didn't sell a lot of my equipment, which I know a lot of people did, because I realised that it wasn't really doing it for me, just being completely computer based. So over the years, it's refined, and I got to the stage where the integration between the two works really well for me, because it covers all the different aspects that I feel I need to write, record and produce music. So the recording process with the Fear Ratio, I would say from my perspective, from an equipment point of view, and it's not very different to my solo stuff. A majority of the recording happens here, and the actual process is quite similar.
With the Fear Ratio project, normally I would come down to the studio here, and we'd just hang out, just do like jams, then we just record loads of stuff on the modular, on the keyboards, and then I'd normally take it away with me back to my place, and I'd start like doing some editing and trying to make sense of it. When that's sort of happened, bounce it back to James, he starts doing his magic, maybe a few more bits of backwards and forwards, and then just getting it sounding right.
We tend to have a process from when we come and do the jams that we try to get as much raw footage together, multi-track the stuff. So we tend to record them all multi-track, and then have separate stems that we can cut and edit. And there's a lot of processing that happens afterwards. But the first step after the initial recordings is for Mark to go back to his studio and start editing, which you do the majority of.
But
he's super fast at it, and for me, it's a bit of a chore. So we found our roles within the recording process, which means we don't ever step on each other's toes with stuff. And the other thing is, if something isn't right for either one of us, it's dismissed.
Well, I think when we create together, for me it's quite different, but for James, some of his his solo sound is in the fear ratio, I think, because I'm a bit more sort of raw club, music based, whereas James is a bit more luxurious in that respect,
Luxurious, I like it. I would say it's markedly different to your solo stuff, but there is elements of my solo within what we do together. But I suppose a lot of that is because 95% of it is recorded here. So with the modular, it's funny when we decided to dip our toe into the idea of using the modular. The first thing that we both said was, if it isn't earning its living, then it's not just an expensive toy. It was a pure experiment, and I had more of an idea of it being a processing tool as opposed to a full-on sound source, which that's completely flipped on its head, really. But it's, I would say, on virtually every record.
Yeah. There's something. There's definitely something on everything we've done. Yeah,
we record a lot of raw footage. Try to separate it as much as normal, but it gets heavily processed afterwards. We don't try to come out with a finished product from it. We don't write songs with it.
It's part of the process. Isn't it?
There's always something in it. No matter what we record, there will be something that can be used. And also with that process, I mean, particularly sometimes Mark gets involved with editing up the raw material, and there's magic in there that I hadn't heard. I don't think either of us might have heard at the time, but it's what you do with it afterwards. And I kind of like this idea of processing, then processing again, and the idea of it's almost like a collage as well, and piecing all this material that we've recorded in a very raw way. But
it makes me laugh when I say to James, "Oh, that bit there sounds amazing. What did you do?" And he goes, "Well, I put it through this, I whacked it through that, mangled it through this." It goes about through like a chain of 10 effects or whatever.
So yeah, I mean, for the last 3 albums, there's been a lot of use of ALM modules. One of my favourites would be the Acme's Tycho. I'm a huge fan of FM synthesis of all descriptions. I love the twang and just the amount of control you have with the CV to be able to hit things and make things morph and move the wave shapes, etc. So that's definitely up there, and I would say is used on a large proportion of the records in one way or another. Some of it will be hidden, buried through processing, but particularly when we begin recording, it's always used as a rhythmic element. The other massive workhorse, of course, is Pamela's. It's I mean, what's not to love about it? You've got all those clock sources, you've got all the divisions. It's a way of keeping everything in check. And I mean, we go on the Castle again with the FM synthesis. I'm just a fan. It's just that whole idea of if you pulled all the wires out of this, I mean, you're not going to make the same patch, and I find that really kind of
inspiring.
And liberating, because you can't just keep going back to the same thing. I mean, but don't get me wrong, you could sit there all day and come up with utter rubbish out of it, and that's also has happened.
Yeah.
But I kind of like this idea of where are we going to end? What's the end goal here? What's the result? After using it for several years, it's much more controllable from my side now, but you still never really know. When we began, I suppose what we said to each other was that make what you're feeling. That's it. Let's just make some music, and this is how it's evolved, because there is no constraint, there is no nothing's mapped out with it, and I guess the only thing that we need to do or want to try and continue doing is to make each record a step forward and different in some respect.
So we've got a new Fear Ratio album coming out June the 26th, I think it is, on Trezor Records, which is, looking forward to it. And we've also collaborated with a UK rapper, King Kashmir. So we've got 2 tracks with him on the album. So excited about that. And looking forward to, everyone checking it out.